When a gaming franchise becomes older and has more release titles, people will argue over which is the best. Sometimes because the games change genres or try new things, so everybody feels differently. But this extends to others that have gameplay so inherently important, they've remained the same. Counter-Strike is one of them. I mean, what else did you expect me to talk about on this channel? This franchise has never deviated from its tactical FPS genre, likely due to the timeless core gameplay. That is, if we exclude the Asian spin-offs. Only certain aspects are different that more or less improve gameplay and help this franchise stay in touch, but some will argue otherwise. Yeah, the discourse kinda looks like this. Everybody has their own perception of which CS is the best. Heck, right now, there are people who unironically prefer CSGO over CS2. This is quite the debate in of itself, but today I want to present to you an argument, older, more contentious, and still unresolved. CS 1.6 versus CS Source. Yeah, sure, you knew because you read the title. Whatever! This is a topic I've seen discussed quite a lot over the years. The pros and cons of both of these games makes them similar yet so different, and I don't think this applies to the modern CS titles because they are live service games that constantly get updated. CSGO from its beginning to end is almost unrecognizable. Same will apply to CS2 down the line. I want to unravel this ancient debacle and maybe even try to come to some sort of conclusion by the end of it. So let's compare and see which is better. I'll promise I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. But why does this argument even exist to begin with? You could say that their differences separate them so much where you must choose which one to stick to. Also, hardware dependencies at the time. With that in mind, they kind of ended up divided, each with a different player base. But partially I think that comes down to the circumstances of when and how these games were released. The first CS is a mod of Half-Life, and after its first release, went through some major changes until version 1.6, and since then it was moved to Steam to help automate the process. CS Source is a remake with a new engine. It features the obvious graphical upgrade, some quality of life improvements, some map updates, and trimming of fats. Bye Felicia, you never mattered. Now, allow me to emphasize that it's a remake, not a successor or sequel. Despite that, the end result is kind of a different CS. You can't say it's the same, just better graphics, because realistically, if you want that, plus the same gameplay, Condition Zero would like to have a word with you. Otherwise, it's not 100% possible with a new engine. If you don't understand, go play these games. Here's a keyboard. And a mouse. Oops. I'm not trying to say this remake is bad, I just think if done differently, the impending division maybe could have been prevented. Because what happened is older players who started with the OG thought it was great, maybe tried out Source, but it felt off, so they went back, while a newer wave of gamers had Source as their introduction, thought it's great, but to them 1.6 was old and outdated. By the way, I am making all of this up, though my hypothetical here may not be too far off reality. In terms of graphics, CS Source might technically look better, but is it that simple? I mean, yeah, at this point, after more than 20 years, 1.6 graphics may be outdated, but it's honestly up to personal preference here. Sounds are the same for the most part. Source has more of them, including ambience, but this aspect is rather non-consequential, really. 1.6's lack of them doesn't make it lesser. Level design is not really a point of contention that pertains to our current subject, so I will leave that for another time. That didn't sound like much of a disparity now, didn't it? Well, here is where I'm gonna get into the nitty-gritty of it all, from a personal point of view. One of the most important aspects of CS in general is game feel, movement, shooting, then hit reg, and I gotta say, 1.6 does it better. It just feels good and more satisfying than Source. One reason is feedback when hitting an enemy. The staggering plus death animations help a lot, which are missing or not the same in Source. I never really found the ragdolls that impressive here. Gmod on the other hand, overall, Source just isn't as competitive, and don't take it from me either. Just look at the ratio of prize money and tournaments between these two games. I am no expert, but there is definitely something missing. It didn't help that Valve never really addressed anything about the state of CSS. On the other hand, 1.6 was still fresh, so perhaps pros were not ready to switch so soon. Not that they missed out on much. This may be a huge point against Source, but let's not forget about flaws. 1.6 has infamously paper-thin walls, and even though someone like me is used to them, getting wall-banged without having a chance, not knowing where it's from, is still infuriating. On a similar note, crouch spamming is also stupid. You know, binding crouch to your scroll wheel, creating this bug where it instantly changes your hitbox to a crouch without impacting your move speed or aim for that matter. Oh, and nades having a 1-pixel hitbox is insane among other exploits. Now let's bring to the spotlight CSS itself. Look, I did mention that graphics are up to personal preference, but change is necessary at some point, so this new look is in a way refreshing. I think the new engine has allowed the modding scene to thrive more than ever. OG CS has a lot of mods and many game modes originated from it, but in Source, they have become bigger, creating new possibilities. Surf and B-Hop have been expanded, Zombie Escape has insane maps with entire campaigns, and there's just so much more you can do with this engine, hence Gmod. Gold Source is great, but Source is simply next level. Just because CSS is not the most competitively viable doesn't mean we should discredit it. Obviously, it shines in other areas. It also does offer genuine improvements. Look, smoke is actually useful, plus the overall nade physics make for more strategic throws and setups. Exploit and bug-wise, besides the infamous uncapped air acceleration when b-hopping and the short-lived dynamic weapon pricing, there isn't anything noteworthy. This game is solid, which includes its walls. Bullet penetration through thinner ones is still possible, but definitely more fair and realistic, which provides a cleaner experience. Finally, what do we have in terms of pros and cons? CS 1.6, competitively viable, high skill ceiling, but exploitable and buggy. CSS, not as competitive, but not as buggy, and new engine allows for more possibilities. And with that in mind, I don't know who wins. Disappointing, right? It's understandable if you call this kind of conclusion a cop-out. It's so easy to just say, oh, everyone is different and unique and special in their own way. But in this case, it's honestly true. Each seems to have what the other doesn't, and provided an incredible experience for so many people. Personally, I never got into CS Source, since it is on a basic level rather the same, so I never felt like I had to move to it, possibly out of contempt. This does not secretly mean 1.6 is our winner. I think this is more of an indication that we have preferences. Back in those days, there was even a big Condition Zero community, regardless if it was considered an inferior CS. So forget about paper walls, unfinished visuals, and mediocre campaign. At the end of the day, they were successful in their own right, and if there's one thing I can't tell people, it's how to have fun. It's not in my right to say what makes you happy. Unless it's cheating, in that case, I pray you wake up tomorrow with double testicular torsion! Anyway, whether this result is what you expected or not, doesn't really matter. Honestly, to an extent, I never really understood why there was even a debate between these games. It's probably people who feel the need to justify how their choices are the better ones, and it's all a load of subjective anecdotal yammering anyways. Now, I don't remember where I put my sodium hydroxide. Yeah, my sink seems to be clogged and it's becoming a nuisance to deal with. I should really stop throwing random stuff in there all the time.